Hello, everyone. Thank you for watching TME Podcast. I am Miss Rhonda, and this is season two. And I'm very ecstatic that my season two is kicking off with Miss Cindy Judd Burns. We have a very important podcast interview today. Miss Cindy Burns is actually a life coach for widows. What she does is she tries to help widows get through the grieving process and get back to living is the short version of it. So, Miss Burns, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm great. I'm great. I am so anxious to have this interview here with you today. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, I know several ladies who happen to be widows. They have lost their husbands in one shape, form, or another. And the most closest person to me that is going through this right now is my twin sister. She lost her husband last year.
Oh no, I'm so
Yes,
sorry.
ma'am. So it's been a difficult process to watch, but I'm very anxious to hear what you have to tell us and information to share with us today.
Well, I'd be glad to share. Do you have a question first, or do you want me to just jump in?
Jump on in, and I'll come in with the questions.
Okay, I am a life coach for widows, and what that means is I help guide widows through grief and into finding their new passions and purpose. I take them from pain to purpose and grief to growth. And how I do that, I can work one on one, or this is where my heart is. I'm starting a membership for widows where you'll get me live and in person at least 3 times a month, possibly four. And in between, there is a community group where you will post what you're going through, and I'll be in there as much as I can. And other members will be willing to jump in and help and say, "Oh, I felt that too, and here's what I did," or something. So it's coaching with community. So you'll get, and it's starting out very small, so you get a lot of individual attention,
Okay.
and it's like I'll have group coaching one day a month, maybe twice a month. Haven't quite nailed that down yet. It depends on what the group wants and needs.
Gotcha.
And I will go, I'll do a recording at the beginning of the month telling you what the theme of the month is. Every month is going to have a theme. Now I just launched it on Tuesday. So this first
Congratulations.
month, thank you. This first month and probably September, we're just going to talk about the process of grief. What's normal, what's not. Pretty much everything's normal. And if it's starting to overwhelm you, we'll give I'll give you some tips and tricks to try to maybe lessen it at that moment. Grief never goes away, though, unfortunately. My husband died 11 years ago on August 2nd, and I
Mm,
launched the membership
on
to honor
August
his
2nd.
memory. Yeah. And I still, there are still times when I just miss them so much.
Hmm.
But it's better. It does get easier to deal with
Okay.
the further on you go.
So, do you find
Excuse
that
me.
there are stages of grief that a person has to go through?
I don't know as they have to go through, but I've seen stages of grief that a lot of women go through. And there's one stage that a lot of women get stuck in. And I think we as women in general get stuck in this is guilt.
Mm,
I should have gotten into the doctor on time, earlier. I should have done this. I shouldn't have done that. We had an argument and just before he died, or I should have been with him when he died. All those kind of things. And it takes a lot of working out. But my how I got through it for myself, because I had a lot of guilt. And then 2 months or 2 years later, my mother died.
Mm.
And I was with her for 6 weeks up until she did. And I felt a lot of guilt surrounding her death. And what I finally convinced myself was there's no such thing as a time machine. I cannot go back and undo or redo anything. So what's the point in feeling guilty about it? Because there's guilt has no point. I mean,
Mm.
if in your life you feel guilty because you wronged somebody, you can always go to them and apologize to them.
Right.
So you do that with your husband, with your spouse through just talking to him, through prayer, through writing in a journal. There are a lot of ways to say, I'm sorry I wasn't here. I'm sorry I wasn't a good wife, you know, all those kind of things. Um, so there are ways to work through the grief,
Mm-hmm.
but that's the one I find most, or through the guilt. That's the one I find most women are kind of locked into. And of course, there's anger, which for me kind of meant rage. I just wanted, I've never held a gun in my life, and I wanted to find a gun and shoot something. I
Mm.
just, I wanted to break things, smash things. And it turns out that a lot of towns and cities actually have a smash
We do too.
business. Yeah. Yeah. There's one here in Lynchburg. I didn't know about it, so I didn't need it. But yeah. And you just go and you smash things and you work it out. And it's very satisfying.
What about the feeling of abandonment when it comes to grief, like the feeling that that person left you?
Yeah. Yeah. I had that with my husband because early on in our marriage, very early on, his father died. And it was the first person that I was close to that I lost.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I took it harder than my husband did. And I told him, I said, you have to promise me that I go first because I don't think I could handle you going first. He told me that could be arranged. So all I could think of was, I want to write a country song saying, you lied to me. You
You should do
promised
it.
me. I'm not musical at all, but it's just, yeah.
Uh,
And I did that. I mean, driving in my car was when I really would give in to um, my feelings. And I would yell things out loud because nobody was around. They couldn't hear me.
right.
And and a lot of women do that too. I think a lot happens in our cars or in the shower where nobody can
Mm-hmm.
hear you, or you hope they can't. And yeah, there's a lot of yelling at him, asking him why. There's a lot of yelling at God,
Okay.
And I was I still am. I'm very religious and very spiritual, and I think knowing that God was there for me through this helped me get through it. But I still kept questioning him.
Mm-hmm.
I still kept saying, I'm mad at you, God.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay to do, because he knows how hard it is.
Yeah.
So
Is there ever a concern that if someone is a support system, like, is there something that we should be on the lookout for? Because, people grieve differently.
mhm.
So I've seen people who I know who are grieving and they seem extremely happy, right? And in my mind, I'm just wondering if it is a front, right? Just like a cover. Or is there anything that we should be looking for that should be like a warning sign to us that the person that we love who is going through the grief process needs more help or
Well,
needs help?
you're not the first person to bring up the happiness. Um, and it was actually her mother who just acted like nothing had happened. Everything was fine. Everything was roses. And I think that most likely is.
Okay.
without talking to her myself, it most likely is a front, or she could be fooling herself even. She could be burying her feelings so deep that she can't, they don't express themselves in a outward form of grieving. That's not good. But as somebody who loves them, you just let them know you're there for them. I mean, if
Mm-hmm.
they talk about their husband, things they used to do or whatever, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty good. And maybe she's at peace with it. Um, Sometimes, unfortunately, it's a relief that he's gone. Maybe he was an abuser or an alcoholic or
Okay.
whatever. So that's a possibility. You have to know the person well to know if that was the case. But I think a trigger to me would be if, say, it's been a couple months and she still closes herself off from everybody. She
Mm-hmm.
doesn't answer the phone. She doesn't go out. Maybe she doesn't bother getting out of bed in the morning or at all during the day.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't shower. She doesn't eat properly. And if that goes on for too long, she is definitely deep in depression. It's normal to go through those things,
Mm-hmm.
but it's usually in spurts.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but if it's a constant, yeah, I would definitely recommend that she get professional help, which I can't give. I can't
Gotcha.
prescribe medicines or anything.
Right, right. So for a mother who has children, and this was my thought process with my sister when her husband passed, because she lost her husband, her children lost their dad. But you can be so busy processing your own grief. How do you help them handle the grief that they're going through? Because you're still a mom.
Yeah. Well, what I found a lot of is that moms tend to push their grief aside so that the kids don't see her crying, the kids don't see her missing him. And she's just more present with them. She's like Uber parent, let's super mom
Mm-hmm.
spending time. The other is, if she just can't deal with her own grief, she can't help somebody else.
Gotcha.
And that's when the children might have a little bit of a problem. And if she has a family, or a loving community around her, maybe they could step in and be the mom, be the parent figure for at least a little while. And if that goes on too long, then they need to speak to the mom.
When it comes to support systems, is there like things that should definitely be done and things that should definitely not be done when it comes to helping someone through their grieving process?
Number one, don't tell them you should be over this by now. There
Gotcha.
is no expiration date on grief. And some people do it they're kind of, not nice people, but some people do it, in a loving way. They say, you're still not feeling any better,
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to for a long time. Some women are in the real throes of grief for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's different and how they react is different. The best thing you can do, especially for a brand new widow, is, and well, even if she's not brand new, she needs to know that she's still a part of the community. She still has value. So invite her to lunch, invite her to things, show up at her house unannounced if your family is that way or your
Yeah.
friendship is that way, with, say, a picnic basket of, and you're going to have a picnic in the house. Um, Invite her out for coffee. Just get her out of the house is the best thing, because then she has to clean up a little.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there's a lot of things that people who care, and it's not just family. It's You can find caring friends and people on the internet. You can find, his family. Now, I was blessed, and his family knew that I had done everything I could. I stood by my husband during his cancer bout. He
Okay.
was in the hospital for 3 or 4 months. He got diagnosed in May and he died in August. And during that time, he never came home. So,
Mm.
and I didn't either. I stayed in the hospital
Okay.
overnight with him the entire time.
Okay.
So they recognized, what I was doing for him.
Hmm.
And they're, we've always gotten along anyway. So, but I hear so many stories, especially if it's a second marriage, um, for him, it's like, well, you know, you're not really part of our family,
Oh,
and they kind of,
wow.
yeah, I hear terrible stories coming from, but also from their own families. Um, it depends, if you were like that, if you were contentious and argumentative beforehand, it's
Hmm.
only going to get worse.
Okay.
Um, and she has to know that they're grieving too. that's
Yeah,
why that's why it's getting worse, because they're grieving too.
that's
and
true.
to and to give them some grace, and just avoid interacting with them, at least for a little while, so that your feelings don't get hurt, and so that you don't say something to them that's going to make
Right.
things
That's a
worse.
good point.
Yeah.
I know when my mom passed, I had someone tell me that people die every day and that I should just get over it.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
are there are those insensitive people out there, and they may be meaning well, but it doesn't come across that way.
Cindy, I didn't talk to that person for a very long time after that.
Yeah, yeah,
Not till they apologize.
yeah. And see, a lot of times people don't understand it, or they don't realize that what they said was hurtful.
Very,
They almost
yes.
need you to say, "I'm sorry, but that really hurt," or
Right.
have somebody else pass it on.
It wasn't until my grandma passed that I learned that you don't say to people that it was in God's plan and that type of stuff. Because don't nobody want to hear that when they're going
Well,
through that and when they've lost somebody. And regardless if it's true or not, don't nobody want to hear that. You know what I mean?
yeah. Plus, you don't know. I mean, unless you're close with the person, you don't know what their religious beliefs are.
Right.
Now, I'm a believer, and I'm the one that said, you know, he's with God now.
Hmm.
I know he's in heaven, and if they start the conversation that way, that's fine. But don't you start it, because you don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
you don't know what they're going through. What their relationship with God is, if any. So,
So tell us how to, if anyone is listening, how they can be a part of your new membership program and be a part of your group.
my membership is at cindyjburns.com, and you can read all about the membership, what I offer, and
Hmm.
what you'll get out of it. And then at the bottom of the page is the signups, and it's $15 a month, or you can pay yearly for 150, so you get 2 months free.
Okay.
And then there is a button for, I don't know if I've spelled it out on that button or not, but I do one-to-one group, one-to-one counseling or coaching.
Okay.
And that's right now I have a package that is 12 weeks for $1,200,
Okay.
but I can do shorter or longer.
That's very much excellent.
Thank
So,
you.
what else did you want to let everyone know, or anything else you want to tell us before we close out?
Well, I do have a free checklist.
Oh,
It's a
good.
it's a daily checklist for mornings to get your day started off right. It lists things like get out of bed, take a shower, brush your teeth, drink your water. It's very basic things that if you're not going through that, you look at it and go, why would anybody not do that?
Right.
But it's really hard when you're grieving.
So, for
And
someone who's like really going through it, that checklist could help them get back into a normal rhythm, right?
yes, yes.
That's really good.
Because a lot of women are, I don't have a reason to get out of bed, so why bother? And
Right.
this gives them, some in a little push. And that can be found at cindyjburns.com cindyjburns.com/checklist.
Okay. So cindyjburns.com/checklist for the free checklist.
Yeah.
So that's for anyone who's going through the grief process, or even if you know someone who may be going through the grief process, you can get the checklist and give them to them so they can try to get back into the rhythm of their daily routine.
But do it with love.
Do it with love. Do it with love and patience.
Yeah, because otherwise they're going to think, what are you butting into my life for?
Okay. Okay. Gotcha.
I mean, not everybody, but they could be thinking that.
Understand.
Also, if those links don't work, put the www dot
in front of
them.
Okay. Yeah. No problem. I'll make sure I put it in when I post the podcast as well. So it'll be there.
Great.
All right. Thank you so much, Miss Cindy Judd Burns, for joining us on TME podcast. It has been a pleasure meeting you.
It's been wonderful meeting you too. I've got a fly that won't leave me alone.
You want to be on the podcast too?
Yes.
You have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you. You too.
All right. You have a great one. I will talk to you later. This has been Miss Rhonda on TME podcast, and I will see you at the top. Bye-bye.